Greetings, Mount of Praise family and friends. My encouragement for today is entitled Gideon's Story, The Dangers of Self-Doubt. My reference text is based on Judges chapter 6, verses 1 to 5, 12 to 17, and 37 to 40. Now, we may all be familiar with the story of Gideon in Judges chapter 6. In this scripture, we are told that the Israelites are suffering terrible persecutions. They are being taunted by the Midianites on one side and the Amalekites on the other. Israel is now hiding in caves. Their very livelihood was being threatened. Crops were being destroyed, their cattle either killed or stolen. In short, their very survival was under threat. It is not surprising, therefore, that when the angel of God appears to Gideon in verse 12 by hailing him, "Mighty man of valor, the Lord is with you." Gideon has some questions. First, if the Lord is with us, why are we suffering? Another question is, who? Me? Who are you calling mighty? Here, Gideon is so distracted by his circumstances, by his reality, that he fails to recognize that the angel is speaking something into his life. The angel is referring to a point in time in the near future, the man Gideon would become. Sometimes, like Gideon, we see only our limitations, rather than allowing ourselves to see what we can accomplish, the possibilities. Can you see the horizon behind me? Do you know that that line isn't really there, that you can move beyond it to other places, other spaces, other possibilities? Sometimes, like Gideon, we take convincing. Gideon was going by what he thought he knew, the facts. Fact 1. His tribe was the weakest of all of Israel. Fact 2. He was the least in his father's household. You know, the old, "I am not good enough" story. I don't have the right connections. I don't have the money. I don't have the qualifications. Even after the angel proves that he is indeed a messenger from God, it still takes Gideon a while to believe. Similarly, we often doubt that God really plans for us to succeed. You know, we can't see the money. We can't see the when. We can't see the how. So, like Gideon, we ask God to prove himself. We can see only difficulties, whereas God sees possibilities. According to this story, Gideon comes up with a perfect way for God to prove himself. According to his narrative, which involves a fleece of wool, if the dew falls on the fleece and not on the ground, he would believe. We are told in verse 38 the next morning that Gideon is able to wring an entire bowl of water from this piece of wool. But still, Gideon is not satisfied. He needs to prove God again. So he gives God a second narrative. He asks God to let the dew fall on the ground, but not on the fleece. And so said, so done. God sends the desired result. We know the rest of the story. Gideon somehow gathers an army of thousands to defeat the Midianites. But again, God says, "No, Gideon, too many men." How often it is we think that our practical solutions will work. We can't see God's way. And sometimes God doesn't see practicality in what we want. He wants to do things his way. Sometimes we want to surround ourselves with too many people, but in reality we only need a few. As we know, Gideon goes on with a small band of about 300 to defeat the Midianites, to kill thousands, and he does indeed become a mighty man of valor. But this is only possible when he allows God to take control. You can read the rest of Gideon's exploits in chapters 7 and 8. And as you know or may not know, Gideon becomes the father of Abimelech, a wicked king in Israel. In closing, for Gideon, the struggle was not being able to see beyond his reality, his limitations, his circumstances. Gideon had to unlearn some mindsets to stop doubting himself. And we do too. We need to unlearn some of those old familiar habits we keep ourselves restricted by. The wonderful thing about Christianity is that it's a journey. There's room for growth and there's room for movement. We can't stop moving and we can't stop growing. And yes, sometimes, just sometimes, that growth puts us outside our normal comfort zones. But the only way to grow is by stretching or shedding some of our own skills, the skins we like to hide in. Some lessons to take away from Gideon are: 1. Look beyond the limitations that surround you. 2. Believe that God will do what he says he will do. 3. Expect great things. Anticipate success and watch God perform beyond your wildest dreams. I encourage you all, Revisit Gideon's story in Judges. Reacquaint yourself with this narrative. See if you recognize yourself at any point. Make a personal pledge today. I will look beyond all my limitations and only expect great things. Blessings on you.